Member Ball,
Present.
Councilmember Peacock,
Here.
Councilmember Montoya,
Here.
Councilmember
No, you're not
Grant.
recording yet.
Okay.
Countdown's still going on. None of this is recording.
Okay.
Like,
12 seconds. We'll pause.
Well, why is it up there then?
I don't know.
Thank you, Bryce. We appreciate it.
Now I can get it. Good evening and welcome to the City Council regular meeting of Tuesday, July 23rd, 2024. This is also a meeting of the Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority. Madam Clerk, would you please call our roll?
Councilmember Ball,
Still here?
Councilmember Peacock.
Here.
Councilmember Montoya,
Here.
Councilmember Grant,
Here.
Councilmember Nash,
Here.
Councilmember Hinkle,
Here.
Councilmember Holman,
Here.
Councilmember Dixon,
Here.
Mayor Heikkila.
I am here. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We get the very pleasure of the very first thing that we're going to do is a presentation to Officer Jenny Bryan from the Farzani Family Foundation and the Chickasaw Nation. Is Officer Bryan here? There's Jalal. Oh. Oh, there she is. I saw her outside and I didn't see her in there. Well, this is a wonderful thing, and to explain to you what's going on, under the leadership of Governor Bill Anatobi and the Chickasaw Nation, and combining with the Farzani family, and Officer Bryant is unfortunately very ill, and she has been trying to pay off her house and do the things that are there. The Chickasaw Nation and the people of the Chickasaw Nation came together with the Farzanis. The Farzanis are obviously very charitable in what they do and try to do things, and they're trying to help you out in your plight so that when the time comes, everything's taken care of, and that's a wonderful thing. And the Farzanis family, then the main focus there is shelter, education, and food. So shelter is one of those things that they're obviously very wonderful in wanting to do. There's all kinds of other things through Children's Hospital, United Way, Habitat for Humanity, 5 different homes that they've gifted, all kinds of other things. So you're just the recipient that comes in on the end of this. And yes, you do. I was going to ask you if you had the check. There's a check that they have worked together, both nations. All right. Thank you. July, please. Please.
Thank you so much. Just on behalf of the Chickasaw Nation, thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity. It just warms my heart today, so I'm probably not going to be able to say much more than that.
Mayor, honorable council members, I want to thank Mayor from the bottom of my heart because when Officer Bryan needed the extra help, he reached out to the members of the business community and he reached out to our family and he said, can you help? Norman's for everybody, and Officer Bryan is putting her life online every day for all of us. So we called some of our friends, and some helped, and then the remaining balance was about $75,000. So I called on the Chickasaw Nation. I said, you want to partner up and wipe out the balance of her mortgage loan? And without any hesitation, we just received the check, and we just matched that check, and we just did it. So as an immigrant who came to the United States, probably not very much money in my pocket, I came to America, I came to Oklahoma, and I came to Norman. And Norman, America, and Oklahoma accepted us with warm heart and gave us everything that we have today. So it's only fair for us to give back because our Father instituted the giving back as part of our DNA. So as Mayor mentioned, we have given about $20 million to the different universities, 10 of which went to OU, so we got the lion's share of the money here in Norman. We also built, like he said, 5 homes for Habitat for Humanities. We partnered up with some of our friends and built 2 duplexes for Habitat for Humanity. We also built, helped building a 4-plex here in Norman, and we are going to look at building other housing for those who need it. So in short, it's the leadership of Mayor Heikkila who just made this happen, and he just reached out to us, and we were able to say yes. So I want to thank one more time the Chickasaw Nation, especially Jill Doherty, whom I've known over 20 years when she was only a teenager. And also want to thank the City Council. May God bless every single one of you, and may God bless America.
Thank you. Next item. Please, Jenny, do.
The order and all of that, but I do want to say that I appreciate you guys. I mean, I'm a complete stranger to you guys, and as parents, we all want better for our kids and the best for our kids. So I feel like every day is a gift. Like you said, you came here, you had nothing. We work hard, and we do the best we can every day. I go to work, you go to work, and we hustle and we make things happen. So for you to share your gift with us means so much, and I appreciate that a lot. And I know all of you guys have been praying and thinking about all of us, and I greatly appreciate it. Obviously, you said my cancer is obviously taking over. I will say, though, my doctor, I'm one of those stubborn ones. He told me on the 18th of January that I had 6 months, and I have crushed that. And so I kind of laughed in his face a little bit yesterday. So, just thank you with all of my heart and everything. So I appreciate you, and thank you for letting us do all of this. So thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda is council announcements, and I'll start at Ward 1.
Just prayers for the family. We are always thinking about you and praying for you, and thank you, sir, and for everything that you guys did. So that's what Norman's all about, and that's all I have.
Councilmember? Sorry.
I'll definitely second that. Yeah, it left me speechless, I'll be honest. That was pretty powerful. I do have one announcement, though, that I would like to point out. On the agenda tonight, on the consent agenda, item number 19. It's something that I worked on for a long time as Ward 8 council member, and I'm really happy to finally see it being on the agenda tonight with a funding source. So it's for a Hawk system at Ruby Grant Park, which is essentially a pedestrian crossing across 36th Street. The residents of those neighborhoods have asked for it for a really long time, and so I'm really happy that we were able to get funding for this. I want to commend staff for finding a grant to fund this and just really doing the hard work it took to get this off the ground. So definitely thank you for that.
Councilmember Montoya?
Good evening, everybody. Glad you all are here. I don't have any announcements.
Yes. Good evening, Ward 4 and City of Norman. Tomorrow, Wednesday, July 24th, between 3 and 6 p.m. at The Well, located at 210 South James Gardner. There will be a resource fair, and they will be joined by City of Norman Municipal Court, who will offer a warrant clearing event during this time. This event is organized by Oklahoma Indigent Defense System, Transition House, and Norman Public Library. I've had people hit me up because they see me sharing that info if they can get in on the event. I am not an organizer, but if you contact one of those three, you could probably get in on the resource event tomorrow or a future one. Anyways, attendees will have the opportunity to engage with a diverse array of organizations providing critical services, including ID replacement with those supporting documents for individuals experiencing homelessness. And with no income, we assist them with obtaining an ID or retrieving a birth certificate. Individuals must either be staying in the Salvation Army and have proof of their homeless status, or a referral from a partner agency to get that ID and birth certificate. Benefit sign-up, access to information and assistance to enroll in various benefits, housing opportunities, connect with entities offering housing solutions, mental health and substance abuse services, explore resources for mental health and substance abuse support, legal services, seek guidance and support on legal matters, have your warrant cleared or other arrangements. And I'll have more information on the warrant clearing, because you can actually contact the city and ask, what do you need to bring? Veteran outreach services, specialized services for our honored veterans, women's resources, tailored support for women in the community, and family programming and assistance, discover programs and assistance for families. For the warrant clearing, it can help you with failure to appear, non-traffic, traffic violations, outstanding fines and costs, options offered, set up a payment plan, schedule a court date or a cost hearing, and if you have questions, call 405-366-5325. Thank you.
Councilmember?
No announcements this week, thank you.
Councilmember?
I have no announcements this week.
Councilmember?
Just also wanted to echo the resource fair tomorrow at the Well for anybody interested in visiting that. A lot of wonderful organizations locally, including the city, will be there. And then also this Thursday at 2 p.m., there is a Norman Police Academy graduation at 2 p.m. again. I forget how many we have in this class, but six. It'll be graduating and hitting the streets on Thursday afternoon. That is a public ceremony, and it lasts about 30 minutes or so. And if that's of interest to you, you're welcome to attend. Also, at our last meeting, I mentioned the ribbon cutting for the Emergency Operations Center being on the 18th of this month. And then after the meeting, Major Barber let me know that it had been postponed till August, but didn't have a for sure date yet. So as soon as we know that, we'll make sure to get that out there. That's our new Emergency Operations Center on East Robinson, a voter-approved project that will house our emergency communications system, which is currently in the basement of the police department. It'll house traffic control management and our emergency management team for when there's weather events or other types of emergencies. This place is a hardened facility that can withstand a severe weather storm and will allow systems of the city to continue operating even when those things happen. So keep an eye out for the opening of that next month, hopefully. And then also wanted to extend my appreciation to the Farzani family. They've done so much for Norman throughout the decades they've been here, but this is just one more example of them giving back to Norman. Also, the Chickasaw Nation, Mayor Heikkila, and everybody else that helped make that situation happen. I think that means a lot to a family, and that our community can come together and show that type of support for someone who's given back to us that way. And that's all I have this week. Thank you.
Councilmember?
Yeah, just what a wonderful community we live in. With the Farzani Family Foundation and the Chickasaws, is wonderful them helping out. Do have a couple other announcements. Today is the first day that the Norman Police Department has implemented their Spider technology. We're also the first in the state to do this. It sends an automated text message to callers who have requested assistance from the police department. It will let you know that your request for service has been accepted or received, and it will provide you updates throughout the life cycle of the incident. So it's just, should be a really, really great communication tool from the police department to the people who are needing their services. Also, the police department is hosting a skills camp, open to, it's coaching, advocating, and mentoring camp. It's open to students entering the 6th, 7th, or 8th grades. It will be at the YFAC August 12th and 13th from 9 to noon, and it is free to attend. August 12th and 13th, 9 to noon, free to attend. And the Utilities Department, they are happy to announce that the City of Norman sanitation crew is about to embark on the new task of collecting all the recycling for Norman. Curbside recycling was approved in May of 2007. It began March 2008. We've used a private contractor the entire time up until this coming August 1st. It will be in-house. It should save money and provide better customer service for everybody using the blue tubs. So big thanks to Chris Mattingly and his team for looking out for the taxpayers. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
I'd like to join in congratulating the Farzanis have left, and so has the Chickasaw Nation. But it was a little bit spooky. The reason I didn't mention it in here, when Jenny was here, Jenny's terminal. And so we thought she only had until June. And now we've got another month with her. And she looks real strong, but that is short. It's that generosity that goes out throughout Norman. It was a matter of asking those people, those kind of people, can I have some money to pay off their house? The idea of paying off that house is so her kids will live in a place that's stable. She's got one kid that's over 18, one that's just about to be. So they can take responsibility for the smaller kids, and life can go on. They can live in the same house that they were brought in. And it's that kind of generosity that makes those kind of ideas possible. And I'm extremely grateful for what it is. But to dim the mood, the next thing is the consent docket. This item is placed on the agenda so that City Council, by unanimous consent, can designate those routine items that they wish to be approved or acknowledged by one motion. If any item proposed does not meet with the approval of all council members, then that item will be heard in regular order. Staff recommends that item 2 through item 19 be placed on the consent docket. I need a motion to place items 2 through 19 on the consent docket.
Motion to approve.
There, motion and second. Motion on the floor is to place items 2 through 19 on the consent docket. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to place items 2 through 19 on the consent docket passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent docket.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and second. Are there any comments from council regarding any item on the consent docket? Seeing none, the motion on the floor is to approve the consent. Members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have, consent docket has been approved unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 20, an ordinance upon second and final reading. The zoning ordinance to permit R1 single-family dwelling district uses for undersized lots where subdivisions existed at zoning ordinance adoption lines of the subject lots, touch lands under other ownership. I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on second reading, section by section.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
I have a motion second. I would like to recognize Ms. Jane Hudson to tell us.
I'm sorry?
To tell us what.
Oh, thank you. Jane Hudson, Planning Director. So we've brought several items before you in the last few months. We started with the ADUs, and then we brought back the parking for the ADUs. And now that those are on the books, we've been fielding several questions about some of these lots that are in the core area that are smaller lots. And we've found that there's a section, this is the subdivision regulations in Chapter 30. So within that, it says that the total area of land, total area owned by the applicant shall have been conveyed in a single deed prior to 1973. And in the zoning ordinance, we also have the the July 13th of 1954 date. What this does is we had two conflicting dates essentially, and these smaller lots that were coming in were considered legal non-conforming. But when we put the ADU on there, it became non-conforming per the subdivision regulations, per that 1973 date. So what we're doing is we're combining this section from the subdivision regulations and referencing it in the zoning ordinance, as you can see here. And then that will allow individuals that want to get a building permit for the accessory dwelling unit to do it on the smaller lot, and they will not have to go forward to Board of Adjustment and ask for any additional variances. They still will have to ask for variances if there's coverage restrictions, or if they're going over the 65, or any setbacks that they need a variance on. They'd still have to do that. But this is really a housekeeping item, trying to get some of this incorporated. So in the R1 district, we're adding this annotated area here, and it would be the same thing in the R2 as well as in the R3 district. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Let's see. Councilmember Grant?
Yes. I was just curious, how much do you think that saves residents not having to go to Board of Adjustment for a non-conforming lot?
It could be upwards of $500, maybe a hair less, but it's also the time. It's the 30 days. They have to place an ad in the paper, everything. So depending on if they hire an architect or something too, that could be additional fees, but it could be upwards of $500.
So this helps them get along a little faster, assuming they have no other variances.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from council? This is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on this item. Remarks should be directed to council only. Once public comments have concluded, council may choose to answer your questions. Madam Clerk, has anybody signed up?
Yes, Mayor, we'll start with Ben Plummer. Okay, Chelsea Gravel.
I'm actually just curious with the ADUs coming in, how we're going to be covered with water. If we're going to be out of water in 4 years, how's this new addition of citizens going to contribute to that? I know that we'll have like 40,000 individuals here 6 or 7 times a year for football games, in addition to what we have now, and I assume that they'll also contribute to the water, but how will this be affected when we have that much more housing offered for our citizens if we're really going to be out of water in 4 years and money in 7?
Thank you, ma'am.
Carlinda. Cheryl Denso.
Cheryl Antonso, I have property in wards 4 and 6. I understand this is a housekeeping thing for ADUs and trying to get the language cleaned up in our zoning. The problem I have is it seems like the zoning changes with the wind in this town, and we don't really think really long-term on the implications of what it will do to the citizenry here. What I have seen is that most properties in Norman that's having, an extra apartment or living space is not necessarily going to residents. It's going to out-of-town guests. And so I think we're just encouraging more and more and more Airbnb-type rentals, short-term rentals, instead of actually providing housing for citizens that need housing. Thank you.
Evan Dunn.
Council, Evan Dunn, 1400 Garfield Avenue. I support staff in this. I think it'll help the flow, and you'll have, you can put your energy towards bigger things.
Thank you, sir. That's all. Mr. Mattingly, I'd like to ask you a question, please. question was brought up about water demand increasing by bringing up people. Would you explain our water situation?
Yes, Chris Mattingly, Utilities Director. As part of our AIM process and planning for the city of Norman, we're planning for a water supply of however the population grows, 1.5% about a year. And she's correct, we're getting tight on our supply. But that's exactly why we're looking at all the different supplies that we're going to go to next. But we do have water, we'll be okay. We could drill another well, we could take a little more from Oklahoma City, or we'll figure out, the contract tonight allows us to buy another 300 million gallons of lake water from Del City. So we're staying ahead of it, but she's correct that we're getting close.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions from council to Mr. Mattingly? Thank you, sir. All right. The motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on second reading. Council members, you may cast your vote.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon second reading passes unanimously.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt or reject the ordinance on final reading.
So moved.
Second.
I have motion and second. Motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance on final reading. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to adopt the ordinance upon final reading passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item on the agenda is miscellaneous comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address City Council. Due to Open Meeting Act regulations, council is not able to participate in discussion during miscellaneous comments. Remarks should be directed to the council as a whole and limited to 3 minutes or less. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for miscellaneous
Yes,
comments?
I'll start with Chelsea Gravel.
Well, Ward 4. We know why I'm here with Norman Neighbors and our Facebook page and what we're doing. What you don't understand is that I'm not trying to get you to not help people. Our people need help, but you're not addressing any of the issues. You're not addressing that our downtown needs power washed, or that there's 65 empty buildings between our downtown area and our OU area. You're trying to put in a TIF over here where we have nice things. You're just trying to ruin our property values, our prices. Our downtown district is going to fall. That you are not addressing the issues by simply addressing 50 people that need a bed. You could take the $50,000 each month and get them an apartment today. That's what the old shelter did before they shut down in 2014. Before Food and Shelter took over. But we're not addressing the issues. We're not addressing the dead birds on the sidewalk downtown, or the poop smears on the sidewalk downtown that the businesses are responsible for cleaning and they have to get their own security. We're not addressing what's happening on all of our business owners. Do we want them all to pack up and leave? Do we want to not have a downtown? We're not addressing issues. We just keep talking about the same 50 people, the same numbers that aren't even correct in our numbers that we're doing in our PIT count. Look at our records of all of the homeless that are committing crimes. There is the upwards of 3,000 people being invited to our city through already having services. I hate that I am now an expert on this topic, but I've spent 2 years studying everything to do with the entire USA, and we are next. We are the next ghost town in Oklahoma. We are going to be Maud if we don't actually address the issues. If we don't actually address that when you look up on OSCN and somebody is a homeless individual, their fines are not being paid and they are in and out of jail. There is no place to put them. Our asylum's shut down. We need a multi-layered facility, but that is not your job. Your job is to protect us, the citizens that are paying. Our job is to help the others. Our job is to help Food and Shelter be able to help this. It is our money that is supposed to be donating and our time. And if you feel that you need to be hearing about the shelter, then you need to go work for the shelter. You do not need to be on city council representing the people that keep voting to vote this down. This is not okay. You're not addressing the crime, the dirt in our community, the rapists that are being continuously let out.
Thank you.
Carlinda Gravel.
Orlinda Gravel, Ward 4, Mayor, Council. Let me give you those numbers. In 2022, there was 527 individual homeless arrested in the city of Norman. In January of 2024, the PIT count was 240. In January of 23, it was 213. And in January of 22, it was 197. So in the year of 2022, 527 individual homeless arrested in the city of Norman, 1785 homeless criminal offenses. In 2023, that went up 21%, 639 individual homeless arrested in the city of Norman, 2118 homeless offenses. So we have other violent crimes. We've got 59% of those being committed by housed individuals, 41% of criminal offenses that are severe offenses that our police officers have to go out on are from the homeless population. Our council member Holman has shared on his Facebook page, he's fully aware of this. These are the individuals that aren't allowed at the shelter, he said. These numbers are not allowed at the shelter because they're causing trouble. He has shared, got about 197 comments on it, I think, up to this point. There's quite the conversation going on there. I'd encourage each of you to go take a look at that. So these individuals are causing enough trouble in our city, but a homeless shelter will not solve that issue. What are we going to do? Do we need to forego the arena and build a multi-level building out on rural property? The city pay for it. The city pay for resource providers and staffing, have different layers for drug addicts, mental illness. Do we instead have FEMA come in and put tents up at the shopping mall? Do we pay for the services? Do we pay to have the resource providers brought out to that property so that everybody can get the help they need and citizens can stay safe or become safe? What do we need to do as a city? We can't Band-Aid this. The shelter's supposed to be low barrier. It's supposed to be for these people. These people aren't allowed to stay there. The people that are there, the majority have jobs. That $55,000 a month could go to supplement each one of those $1,000 apartment, and they would have housing 24/7, around the clock. If it's just simply a matter of waiting on their HUD voucher and waiting for an apartment, do we clean up our downtown? Do we make an ordinance so that shopping carts aren't allowed on sidewalks and roadways? Can we put some soap in our power washers on the sidewalks on Main Street? It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And I love Main Street. I love Norman. I love our city. It's devastating to see it going in this direction. What can we do? I'll help. You call me when you're ready. I'll come work. I'll come help do it. You give me a power washer and a soap.
Thank you for listening. Diana Hutzel. I'm sorry, Diana, I didn't have my mic on.
Good evening, Diana Hutzel, Ward 5. I believe that the public may be supportive of a sobering center and a 24/7 homeless shelter if the shelter is transitional and if it requires minimal reliance on the general fund. To effect this solution, though, we must be willing to listen to each other and be open to compromise and do a little bit of out-of-the-box thinking. Yesterday, I sent you, Mayor, Council, City Manager, and City Attorney, a 6-page letter of proposing a potential solution. My letter included the use of 2 existing co-located buildings on Griffin for the sobering center and shelter, and 3 small parcels of adjacent land for a dog park, urban garden, and outdoor recreation area. My letter also included potential funding strategies, resourcing ideas, and recommendations to incorporate community volunteerism. Tonight, I want to focus on the shelter aspect of my letter. I believe citizens are willing to support a permanent shelter in Norman, but not one that is low barrier. I believe they want a shelter that compassionately addresses the needs of Norman's unhoused, but that also requires its residents to participate in programs focused on sobriety, mental health, employment, permanent housing, and reintegration into society, the underlying conditions of much homelessness. A shelter with limited stays to encourage reintegration. A shelter minimally dependent upon, if not independent of, taxpayer funding. So how do we make this happen? We start by negotiating a nominal lease with the state. We help them recognize the benefits, which are reduced homelessness, improved community health, and lowered incarcerations, just to name a few. We seek non-general fund sources for setup. One of the 16 examples in my letter included collaborating with OU to try and obtain excess furniture that they have for dorms. We look at other potential long-term funding sources. One of my recommendations was endowments. OU is a major cornerstone in Norman. A substantial annual endowment to sustain the shelter would demonstrate their commitment to social responsibility and community welfare. It would also provide OU faculty and student opportunities for research and practicum. Norman Regional, the same. An annual endowment aligns with their commitment to wellness and community health. Shelter support would benefit the hospital through reduced uncompensated care costs, improved emergency room capacity, and opportunities for staff education and research. What about implementing a municipal court fee to support the shelter? I believe it's justifiable. The shelter contributes to community welfare by enhancing improved public safety and well-being, which in turn reduces court appearances, interactions with law enforcement, and cost of incarceration. One final point. The transitional shelter should be overseen by a governance committee to ensure accountability, community representation, adherence to standards, proper funds management, and transparency. Thank you for your time. And if you haven't read the letter, I recommend you do it. Thank you.
Marguerite Larson.
Marguerite Larson, Ward 6. So I just really want to address a friend's house. I understand that there is a lot of controversy about whether we should keep it open or whether we should keep it closed. The fact that people actually have a house to go to periodically, which is not really a house, it's just a little cot that they can sleep in. I firmly believe that we need a permanent shelter, that we need a permanent solution to help our unhoused population. The unhoused population is not going to get any smaller, it's just going to get larger. A lot of it due to housing costs, housing rising, and we have several people who are raising their rentals. So I just don't see a solution to this unless we can have a formidable, permanent housing solution for our unhoused friends. The fact that the Supreme Court came down and said being unhoused is a crime and you can put them all in jail, you're just putting people in jail. I've seen it all week long where policemen are gathering up our unhoused and taking them away in handcuffs. I just don't think this is a viable solution. The courts will be stagnant. The judges will have a lot more frivolous cases that they don't really need to see. So just because you can close the shelter doesn't mean you should close the shelter without a permanent solution to transition them out. Thank you.
Cheryl Denso.
Cheryl Ann Denso, Wards 4 and 6. Let's face it, folks, the situation we have right now is typically a flop house, okay? It doesn't really provide what the citizenry that's unhoused needs. If you really want to know how to operate a well-oiled machine, you need to take a look at what San Antonio does. It's like a three-legged stool. They have private industry, they have charitable organizations, they have institution, the government, handling the whole problem. They have a situation where you have people that come in, and if they need sobriety help, they go into that one area. As they make improvements in their lives, they move into a more comfortable situation. They don't get just a cot. They can get an apartment, a room, an apartment, a job. as they move through the progression of improving their lives and improving their mental health or whatever problems they have, then they eventually get HUD housing in an apartment. This lifts people up. At this point, we don't have that. Also, in North Carolina, the University of North Carolina has partnered with the community and the government and private industries and charities. Norman cannot do this on its own with its government. We need better funding. We need to beat the bushes here and ask for more help from outside just our city government, because we're not doing a good job. Everybody can agree with that. We are not doing a good job on this issue. And that's been my point for the last year, that this issue has not been handled correctly. Can't just throw money at it, because people are making money off of the pit count in this town. Thank you.
Richter Baxter.
My fellow Americans, I'm asking for your vote, a vote for community and for unity, for collaboration. I'm the founder of nonprofit organization Racism Stinks. I'm gonna give you some updates. We're a 501c3 registered student organization at OU. Our logo is the skunk, shadow skunk is black, white, stinky. Of course, he's a skunk. Our approach is to heal the racial divides in our world, not widen them with accusations or half-truths, but bring all willing people together through community collaborations. Racism Stinks, real, not woke. Now, it's joke time. Are y'all ready? Michael's never ready. Okay. You can try to act sneaky like a skunk, but somehow someone always seems to get wind of it. We got a couple laughs this time. We got a couple laughs. So I'll just leave it at that one. Okay. July 8th, I met with Big H. We had a really great meeting, and he secured the park for us for next month, August 10th. We're hosting the Skunk Dog Cookout. We're looking to have that's hot dogs, but we call them skunk dogs. But we're having 1,000 hot dogs. We want you guys to bring everyone that you know and invite people you don't know. That's what community is about. July 16th, Sergeant Jeff Casillas and the Norman Police Department hosted Cookout with a Cop at the Vicksburg Apartments. I want people to support these policing efforts that they're doing for community policing. I was there, had a great time. My executive director, Arlena, she's in the back, she was there. We had a great time, delicious burgers, and the police were really connecting with the community. Like I said, we're looking for help for our community cookout. This event will lead up to our second annual Norman's Race Against Racism. It's a 5K. It's going to be in November. If you're a parent, teacher, student, city official, city worker, concerned citizen, we'd like your help. We ask you to join us in truth and in love. I said, I know most people, everyone here would say that, you know, they love their neighbor. However, can we say that we know it to be true that the 2020 racial unrests are all over? Millions of people around the country are still pushing divisive narratives and half-truths concerning how we all see each other and deal with each other concerning race relations. People from opposing sides are setting up divisive talk.
Yep. You got it.
Got me?
Yeah. All right, thank you. Thanks, man.
Alex Lampier.
Here, Ward 2, I just want to show my support for A Friend's House. I think those folks are doing the best job they can, given the circumstances. I know the homelessness situation in downtown is bad, but ending that contract is just going to exacerbate the problem and make things worse. So please don't end that contract without a good solution in place. I would prefer a permanent solution, so, yeah, that's all my comment is. Thank you.
Christina Owen? I don't think I saw her. Kathleen Stratton?
Kathleen Stratton, Ward 8. I came here to talk in support of a friend's house and food and shelter for friends because it means a lot to me, and I feel like it should mean a lot to Norman. And I'm really glad to hear a lot of what people are saying today about actually working together and trying to build up our community, because I'm going to be honest, the way that I've heard people talking, both citizens and part of our city government, it seems like some people are more putting their energy towards being hateful towards each other, attacking them for being unhoused or being addicts or even being part of the LGBT community. When the truth of the matter is, every human being deserves to have a life and have a place to sleep that is safe. And if we say that there's more important things and we let them die on the streets, then what does that say about us? Thank you.
Dan Munson?
Dan Munson, Ward 6. Tomorrow there's a warrant clearing event at the well from 3 to 6. If you have a warrant, you should show up. Now I want to go on to the TIF district. In 2023, the Big 12 dispersed $39.8 million to each college. In 2023, the SEC dispersed $51.3 million to each college. It's $11.5 million difference per year per college. If you times 11.5 by 25 years, that's $287.5 million. Shouldn't that be enough to cover the cost of an arena? Did you know that ESPN just signed a new TV contract with the SEC that will generate more annual revenue per college over the next 10 years? I still have some questions with regards to the entertainment TIF district. What are we planning? Are we planning on assessing a fee on every game or concert ticket to help pay down the debt? If so, what will that fee be? Are we planning on assessing a fee for every parking spot sold at the arena? If so, what will that fee be? Will the University of Oklahoma and the developer cover any revenue shortfalls annually from the projected sales and sales tax and property tax revenue collected in the TIF? What is the contingency plan if the general fund falls short because of the lack of sales revenue? What is the contingency plan if property tax collections fall short of revenue collected? How much will the developer pay for a connection fee for water and sewer? We currently don't have connection fees listed for any pipe greater than 6 inches in diameter. I'm guessing that the arena will require at least a 12-inch diameter pipe. Since Ward 8 is fed by water from that we purchased from Oklahoma City, will we need to purchase more water from Oklahoma City for all of that new development? If so, what will the cost of that be? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Deanna Wilkinson?
Good evening. My name's Deanna Wilkinson, and I'm a resident of Ward 2. First, want to express my gratitude to each of you for everything you do for our city and tackling these complex issues that we're facing. I've lived and worked in Norman since 1989 and have resided in my current home for the past 22 years. I've raised 2 children here who are now lovely adults. I loved raising my family in this community, and now I love exploring our local businesses as an empty nester. I'm a clinical social worker, and my specialty is trauma repair and recovery. The majority of my career, since getting my master's degree in social work in 1994, has been working with children who've been severely neglected, physically and sexually abused, and who have often suffered multiple caregiver disruptions. I've worked with children whose trauma was pre-verbal, including toddlers who experienced sexual assault. I've worked in and with various nonprofit organizations here in Norman over the last 30 years, and I truly believe we have a wealth of expertise and compassion in our community. Since COVID, I have shifted my trauma work to adults, in person and over telehealth, still with a focus on trauma repair and recovery. Most of my clients score a 7 to 10 on the ACE questionnaire, which means they've answered yes to 70 to 100% of the questions about experiencing physical assault, sexual assault, neglect, living with a mentally ill or drug-addicted caregiver, having a caregiver in prison, and living through caregiver divorce or separation by the time they were 18. The majority of my clients, as a result of these experiences, have grown into adults who struggle with severe depression and anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, substance use and sometimes dependence, and dysfunctional relationship, including many who are survivors of intimate partner violence. Many struggle to get their basic needs met, and several of my clients have been unhoused at one time or another. They rarely have healthy families of origin who help provide a safety net when they experience a financial crisis. Some of my clients qualify for disability. Some are in the process of applying for it. When that's the case, their time frame for approval is usually a minimum of 2 years. I've had clients who've had to sleep in their car, and I have had clients who have slept at a friend's house. I'm gravely concerned about the possibility of a friend's house being shut down without an immediately available, safe, and accessible alternative in place. I recently had a client express to me desperately in a therapy session that they would rather lay across the train tracks than spend another night on the street. The dozens of people who find shelter each night at a friend's house have likely already experienced terrible tragedy in their lives. My 30 years of experience tells me that that is true. I hope, as you're making these very important decisions about how to best tackle these complex issues, that you remember the precious lives at stake here. I don't want to lose a single human in our town. Willingness to find a better way. Let's come together for our in-house neighbors and help write a chapter of healing instead of more chapter of pain and trauma.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mayumi Wendler.
My name is Mayumi Windler, Ward 2. I have a few things. Okay, so item number 16 about buying the house that's on Lahoma. I'm really curious what's going to happen after that house is demolished. I mean, if the city's going to own that land, can it be used in a, nice way to, have Habitat for Humanity build a new house there and, to house somebody? That would be really cool. Second thing, I would really like community gardens in all of our parks. I think that would help with some of the food insecurity that people have, like for fresh vegetables and stuff like that. Trees in our parks, fruit trees. That would be awesome. That would be amazing. Okay, so I have a fruit tree in my front yard. There were 8 peaches. I grabbed 1 peach because it was ripe. The next day, a bunch of those peaches were gone. Because it's in the front yard, people thought, oh, I'll just grab a peach. Fine, whatever. Okay, but, still fruit trees instead of decorative trees, that would be good. Just, and if you could, go to the park and get food. That would be nice. Third thing, we have the animal shelter, right? The city pays to shelter animals. Why do we do that? And why are we resistant to paying to shelter humans? That's it. Thanks.
Rob Norman? I don't think I saw him. Jeanette Coker? There she is.
Evening. I'm Jeanette Coker, and I'm here to support the homeless. Our treatment, the way we treat our homeless, is shameful. We can and we should do better. I haven't been paying much attention to what our city council has been doing for years, until recently. That's when I heard about a proposed homeless shelter in my area, East Norman. I said no. I started paying attention. You do so much. We give them free food, free phones, free clothes, shoes, free needles. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard. No strings, no real help. You've heard of tough love, it works. Enabling does not. Anyone who has dealt with addictions or mental illness knows that. Otherwise, you are enabling people to adjust to the homeless lifestyle and get deeper into drugs and continue their pattern of behavior toward death. Yesterday, I was paying a guy who mowed my lawn when he got a phone call. Someone had died. I said, who? Was that a friend of yours? He said, no, not really, and it's not anybody you would know. There's a whole community in Norman that I really don't even know about, but they are a part of Norman, and we ignore them. I hear a lot about deaths. A few I know, or their families. Most of them I don't know. If the shelter sleeps 60, then maybe 60 is the number that Norman has the capacity to help. So help them, really help them, and stop enabling them. And then help 60 more. And then continue. I believe what you do now is counterproductive, abusive, and cruel. Today I read a little about a place called Resurrection House and Life Skills Institute. It sounded very promising. I don't know anything about it, but we need to do something different, but we need to close the warming shelter. To continue the lifestyle.
Thank you, Ms. Coker.
Thank you. Floyd Carroll?
I feel better already since I've watched somebody pay this lady's house off, because most of you guys know that Midwest City stole my home from me, and they bulldozed it in 10 days. And I owned it. It took me over 10 years to pay for it, even though I had 15 years or 20, I don't remember. So I appreciate you letting me raise my grandkids here, and I watched her great-granddaughter here too, and a few other kids in the neighborhood that I really enjoyed that. That's the best part of my life. But there's a lot of misery in it too, because I don't know how to get a handle on this stuff, but if you guys are capable of robbing somebody of their property, that's not too good. But even though I'm a veteran, they said they'd give me a tiny house, and I said, I've been having a problem with the house that I owned, but they wanted me to keep my mouth shut, imagine that. So the other day, I had a problem with somebody turning me in electronically, 2 people, you know, they're cowards. But we had a yard sale, and I hate to tell you how much that cost me, because they sold stuff that I bought them for less than what I gave for it. That's how good-hearted those guys are. And then the motorcycle that was out in front, Janita was on me because it wasn't licensed. We used to get a reminder in the mail to license them things, and during COVID, we didn't get it. So it went by for a while, even though it was insured. I rode it around, didn't know it was licensed. So I lost the key. I went to Don's Lock Shop. They charged me $160-something for one key that didn't work, and it only worked on the gas cap. Is that advertisement? So I called the dealer, and they said, go down here, and they'll do it for you. That's where we send everybody. I went over there, and they told me $25, and I went to pick it up, and it was $35. But at least the key worked on everything. Is that some insanity? I'll be over there at the Wellness Center tomorrow. Because it took me 10 years to figure out why they were stealing these little bitty bicycles from these children, the homeless. And when I figured it out, they make trailers to pull behind their bicycle, and that upgrades them in the bicycle community. Imagine that. But I want you to tell you, I never got my bicycle stolen when I was young. And I think it should still be like that. It breaks my heart that they steal stuff from these children. And me and another person in the neighborhood was the one that was finding needles.
Paul Wilson.
Evening, Council. Paul Wilson, Ward 1. I'm here to put my support behind a permanent shelter, whether it's associated with a friend's house or food shelter, because as most of you know, I'm a product of coming off of homelessness through the help of a shelter. I will not deny that the downtown businesses are probably suffering due to a shelter, due to the homeless down there. But if you do close a friend's house, 50 to 55 more people will be on the streets every night. I don't know about you, but that's counterproductive. You want to get them off the streets, but yet you want to close the one shelter that is getting them off the streets. I'm kind of interested to see what's going to be talked about in the next item, because we definitely need to stop thinking as a temporary solution and a more permanent solution. It was said best at one of the study sessions, when the state, county, local organizations fail to help, it falls on the city. Because if we do nothing, nothing gets solved. It's a terrible thing to find yourself homeless. Most people in this room are probably 1 to 2 paychecks to where they are not going to be able to afford where they live. So if they get drastically injured, guess where they're going to be? They're going to be on the streets. They're going to be looking for some place to go. They're going to be looking for a shelter to help them, or organizations to help them. I know there are people on the dais right now, there's a few of you that don't think the city should get involved in helping the homeless. Well, if the entire community doesn't help, then where do we get the help? We help people during natural disasters. Most of us know it as the Oklahoma Standard. I know it very well. Homelessness is not a natural disaster, but it is considered a disaster right now throughout the country. So why don't we use that Oklahoma Standard to help people less fortunate, just like we do for people who suffer from a natural disaster? So I look forward to hearing what's going to be done in the next item. I'm very positive about where we're going. And we just can't do nothing. Because if you do nothing, nothing happens. Nothing gets solved. Thanks.
Evan, done?
Hey, everyone. I want to thank everybody who spoke and who's trying to solve these problems, and they're thinking outside of the box. They're thinking, of different ways for us to allocate our resources. And before I get into what I want to say, let me welcome the new members of the dais. I wasn't here 2 weeks ago. I would have told you then. A lot of these challenges I see being rooted in the lack of education. We always talk about that as being the foundation for a healthy society. I see it playing a role in the arena debate, as well in how we can mitigate and create a model for how the unhoused can contribute to these massive global problems that are arising from the architecture of the mind. How do we perceive reality? And the Great Courses is available, $7.99. It's like going to a university class from home, and if you find yourself getting a thought or an idea and you miss a couple minutes in that lecture, you can just scan backwards. Oh, okay, I remember where we were going. I'm with the class. You can't do that in a live class. How do we create an entertainment and an enlightenment district? How do we integrate, like it was mentioned earlier, what if we integrate farms that are some type of a program in which there's some documentation system. You scan yourself in. There's other public officials there. Outside of these chambers, there's soil that's being wasted. That is a competitive advantage that we are neglecting. China is maximizing all of their competitive capabilities. You ever heard of 996? 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, 6 days a week. That's serious. The only opportunities we have to compete is in implementing an enlightened perspective on reality, such that we make the best decisions individually and collectively. That's right. You all have a lot of responsibility. Norman deserves and needs your best. That's why I think you all ought to get paid. 10 times what you get paid right now. Wouldn't that make this less of a martyr job? Wouldn't that make you feel?
Thank you, sir.
Trudy Sickles.
Ward 5. Out of concerns, my concerns for both the homeless, the unhoused individuals in our community, and for our central business district. I'm a longtime Norman resident, very concerned about both issues. I just am here today to join my voice with those of others in Norman and here tonight who have asked that you please do not close this shelter until we have an established center elsewhere. I urge you to please do that. Thank you.
Item number 21, a discussion regarding a possible location for the homeless shelter and closure of the Gray Street location. Do you want to lead that off, or do you want me to?
Happy to start that conversation, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Holman reached back and to a discussion item that had taken place a little over 2 years ago regarding a potential vacant building on the Griffin campus that might meet the need for shelter services. It was before the decision was made to occupy the current Gray Street location. A handful of staff members met with staff members of the State Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services on site and actually identified a building that seemed like it might fit the bill. We pursued the advancement of the idea that the city could rent or lease that particular vacant building, and it had not been part of the program at Griffin Hospital for a number of years. Within a couple of weeks, we received a communication back indicating that the department plans to sell all of the property, so they'd rather not enter into a new lease agreement and then wind up selling the property out from under, the city of Norman in that scenario. Well, 2+ years later, the property still hasn't sold. They have broken ground ceremonially on a new location for the next central behavioral health hospital in Oklahoma City. They anticipate the opportunity to occupy that space in mid-2027. So we know that even if the property were to sell, they wouldn't, the State Department of Mental Health would not be able to vacate the property for at least a couple of more years. So when Councilmember Holman had that recollection, we reached back out. There was some new leadership from a gubernatorial appointee at the State Department of Mental Health. We asked if we could take a peek inside that building to see what condition it was in after a few more years of being uninhabited. And a couple of council members were able to participate in that walkthrough. And what we heard from state staff at the site was tomorrow morning they'll be meeting with OMES, and I couldn't tell you the acronym for which state agency that is, but the General Services Department of the state of Oklahoma that helps dispose of surplus property. And they would take our request to occupy that space with them to OMES tomorrow and report back what steps the city could undertake to potentially occupy the space. We also let them know that we had obtained appraisals on the city's soccer park and the Sutton Wilderness area, and we're prepared to acquire those properties from the State Department of Mental Health. And perhaps in doing so, they might let us use that building for free for the next couple of years while they prepare that new hospital site. So I did volunteer if they needed somebody from the city to join them at the Capitol to answer any questions as it related to our visit or what we see in terms of future opportunities at that Griffin site, that we'd be happy to join them in person. And I'll be able to report back to council hopefully tomorrow afternoon in some written format what the response was from OMES on that inquiry. In the meantime, the conversation about the current shelter location has continued, and there are just a number of conversations circulating right now as to what direction council may choose to proceed. So we wanted to provide you with an update on that step taken yesterday, what steps we see in the immediate future, and take any direction from council tonight on a direction you may choose to go. So here to answer any questions you have.
Councilmember Peacock?
Thank you. So I know you don't have a crystal ball, but assuming the meeting goes well tomorrow and it's a go from OMES, what do we think a legitimate timeline might be to mobilize and move to a new location?
We are fortunate. We were able to bring Mr. Greg Clark, our chief building official, and our new building superintendent, Lance, and Lance's last name escapes me at the moment, but one of Mr. Olson's troops to really put a professional set of eyes on the environment. Since our last visit a few years ago, it looks like they have lost the ability to cool the building. They have a chiller system that would be very expensive to try to bring back to life for potentially a very short-term use. They said the boiler system is still operational and they can warm it up. They just can't cool it down very well. There were fire sprinklers in parts of the building, but not all of the building. And there are definitely more restrooms in that facility than the facility currently being utilized for shelter services. So Mr. Olson's crew is in pursuit of some cost estimates for maybe temporary cooling solutions. And Mr. Olson, you might be able to give us some insight as to estimated timetables based on your conversations with our building superintendent.
Yeah, I have a little presentation to do, if that's okay with everybody. We did explore over there yesterday, so this is a real quick thought process. We only had about 24 hours to digest this, so we try to put everything together. We do think that the building is in rather good shape. So if you look at this site, we got Main Street right here on the south part. You have 12th Avenue, Reed Street that's running right there. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but right there in the middle of that yellow building is the site we're talking about. We were able to get a real quick layout that we think that is the most efficient way to possibly set up a possible homeless shelter. We'll have, as you can see, there's the blue area would be our main shelter area. That is not sprinkled right now. Before we get in there, we would want to make sure that we have a fire suppression system that's operable in that area. We have egress, and on the north side, or I don't know, that might actually be the east and west side, but on the top side of your screen and the bottom side of the screen, we also have restrooms that are connected to, right there, connected to that big gym space. We would probably recommend, after, of course, we'd have talks with the operator first, is probably split that room, put a temporary wall right down the middle. There's a stage at one end, which would be great viewing area for staff to kind of set up. We'd also, in kind of talking to Greg, we want to make sure that it's fire safe. So you kind of look at there, being a gym, we believe, we want to go in there and do a little bit more research, but we do believe that right there is a 2-hour firewall, so we think that would provide enough safety. All these red triangles or doors that we would need to replace to make those 90-minute fire safety doors, so if there's a fire, it would take 90 minutes to get through that. I'm trying to remember everything else. We do have a kind of a list of unknowns. We have to figure out first who has the authority of jurisdiction over that property. Since it is on state property, it's typically the state, but there is a possibility they might pass that on to us since we're another government entity. Make sure that we have accessibility, like we said, on the north and south ends of the building. We want to make sure that everything's sprinkled where they're sleeping. We don't need to, according to Greg, if our building official, if we're the AHJ, we won't need to sprinkle the rest of the areas. I kind of already hit that 90-minute fire door area. We want to make sure that it does have a need of probably updating smoke and carbon monoxide detectors in the sleeping area. We believe that HVAC units do need to be replaced. It's going to be a lot cheaper for us to put smaller units in there after kind of looking at the area, so we don't want to penetrate any of those walls around the gym. First of all, we don't want to run the fire protection that those walls provide, and two, we don't know what's inside those walls, so we don't want to discover what's inside those walls. So it'd probably be best to get 3 HVAC units to make sure that we have enough area over there. But the good news for that's smaller units, and we think we possibly, if we have good luck, we can reuse the ducting that's in there. The preference of facility maintenance would be to have a new HVAC system, and along with electrical heat, there's a little bit worries about how old that boiler is, and it has not been used in 6 years. Boilers, if not properly maintained, can be very dangerous, so we want to make sure we avoid all that. Two, we need to go in there and test all the water and sewer lines. We think that their chances are pretty good that they are in operable shape, but we just want to make sure before we come up with a timeline. We think in best case scenario, which this building, like I said, is in really, really good shape, it could take us up to 3 months to get the building ready. Worst case scenario, if we find problems, it could take around 6 months to get the building ready.
That was a really Good answer for my question. Thank you. I don't know if you remember this offhand, but you know what the renovation budget we looked at for the Gray Street location was offhand?
Off the top hand, if we were going to go in there and sprinkle the building and do a little bit of work, I think it was right around $220,000.
Okay.
And kind of talking about budget with this, it's very unknown at this point. I think the best case scenario, you could be talking about 100,000. Worst case, you could be talking 500,000.
Sure.
You just need to go in there and explore everything.
Okay, that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Grant?
Yes, Jason. And maybe Daryl might be able to answer too. I kind of got an answer, could be before November if there's nothing wrong, so you could get ahead of that state law. What was 500K we had allocated to 718? Did you?
Yeah, that was about 2 fiscal years ago, and I believe that if Anthony remembers, I think that probably went back into the capital budget and got reapplied to other capital projects. Yes.
He's nodding his head, yes. Okay, and then 2021, we had a discussion about this location. 2024, we're having a discussion. What was the estimated number of people that could stay back in 2021? And do we think we're doing the same number in 2024 or less?
So we had that exact same talk with Greg today. We're minimum, there's no problems to go in there and have the current occupancy we have now, and we probably need to explore it a little bit further, but we could probably double occupancy if we really push it, because remember, that is the space that we're picking out. When I use the word efficiency, first of all, it's going to be the fastest, probably most budget friendly, but it's also the largest room inside that building. So we think that you could put more people in there possibly.
I think that's it for me right now. Thank you.
Councilmember Ball?
Yes, sir. Let's start with the current contract and the current shelter. I'm not sure who to direct this question to, so I'll just ask it, and all the department heads are here, so one of y'all can answer it. Let's say your department's audited. They find 19 findings, and those findings include making operational changes without the consent of the city manager, willfully and maliciously firing employees and agencies to hire your own friends, allowing unsafe environments for clients, inadequate or non-existent record keeping, and over budgeting and outright mismanaging well over $100,000 of taxpayer money. Which one of y'all would still have a job with the city? Any of you? No? So, if the YFAC had 122 calls to NPD and fire department due to overdoses and assaults, if Westwood parking lot looked like what I just drove by coming here, Mr. Olson, you think you still have a job here? Probably not. I'll answer for you, probably not. Mr. Francisco, if you couldn't budget and you mismanaged taxpayer funds, would you be our finance director? Probably not. Mr. Mattingly, if you were firing individuals and hiring your own friends, would you have a job here? Probably not. So this is our audit right here. I don't even know how many pages it is, but 19 findings on what this shelter has done wrong. So, Rick, what's our liability? With an audit like this, with this kind of findings, let's say something happened to one of the clients there. Would they be able to use this audit to come after the city?
I think the issue for us has been, and the reason that we did it the way that we did it, is for tort claim purposes, there is an exemption for municipalities for acts or omissions by a independent contractor. So that really was the purpose of us doing it in the manner that we did it, was that individual is responsible for any potential liability as a result of the operation of that shelter. But I would add to that, since that audit has been sort of created, what we've been doing as a staff is going through all of the auditor's findings and trying to amend our contract so that we address all those issues. So that going forward, again, we talked about the fact that when this was done initially, it was done in a little bit of a emergency, so to speak. So maybe some of the issues weren't necessarily anticipated. And now that we've had the opportunity for that shelter or that facility to be in operation, we have noted some of those deficiencies, and the parties are working towards language in the contract that would address those issues.
And just to note on what Mr. Knighton shared, we kind of walked ourselves through the timeline that when our initial negotiations a few years ago deteriorated and we reported back to council, we are out of answers. And Councilmember Foreman at the time asked what was currently being stored in the building at 109 West Gray, and you know, lots of document storage and some furniture that's waiting to be surplused, et cetera. And it was late September, early October, and the decision was, let's go move all that storage out, and we're gonna occupy this space for shelter services. We were still at that point kind of anticipating it might be a 4-month conversation in a contract that was put together in very short order to make sure we could get the doors open in the timetable that council had prescribed. It did evolve into a much longer scenario than I think was originally anticipated in that contract. So staff has been drafting what would be an amendment to the existing agreement to address those issues that you've just outlined. So always looking for an opportunity for an improvement in the quality of services provided, whether we're providing it directly or it's being provided by a third party on our behalf. But that's been our mission.
All right, and I think it goes a lot further than just deficiencies with the contract. But I greatly respect Ms. Kalnick's audit, her recommendations, the city attorney's office recommendations with that, and staff's recommendations. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't, but I think they're a great starting point. But what we have right now is unsustainable. It's not safe. And so as far as this current contract, our current shelter, I wouldn't have it in my backyard. I wouldn't have it next to my kid's school. And because of that, I'm not going to vote to put it anywhere else here in Norman. What I would do is gladly talk about a sobering center. I think we heard some amazing ideas earlier, but it has to be run with Norman Regional. It has to be in partnership with Red Rock, has to be in partnership with Cleveland County, the Sheriff's Department, NPD. We have to get people there safely. We have to provide them because that's what we have right now. We have an emergency shelter. It is an emergency shelter. That's what a sobering center is. But unlike a shelter, a sobering center does not enable hopelessness and despair and keep people homeless. It gets people to the resources, whether that's willfully or whether we have to force them, because they're going there for a reason. We're getting them off our streets. We're making our streets safer. And so a sobering center, I'm all for it. We want to talk about a sobering center in a place, if we want to hire a resource and public health director, kind of like an Action Center 911 place that coordinates with all of our private charities, all of our churches, and can you call them and say, I'm homeless, I'm having mental health crisis. They know who to get you with. You want to hire that position? I'm all for it. But I cannot, in good conscience, keep what's going on in our city. It's a burden on all of us. It's a drain on our taxpayers. It's destroying our downtown, and it's not safe, not just for us, but for them. They are our least fortunate and our most vulnerable, and all we're doing is enabling that. So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Councilmember Holman?
Thank you. Daryl, yesterday on the tour, one of the engineers or one of the guys that had the keys, he mentioned that other buildings on the campus were getting new HVAC systems installed, and he wasn't sure if this one was one of them or not. And then Greg, I think it was Greg, mentioned something about 109 East or West Gray, that the unit that is on it could potentially be moved to this facility because we'll have no use for this building anymore. And I think we're interested in potentially seeing it redeveloped anyway. So that was one thing I overheard yesterday, and I wasn't sure if that was still, or if we even know anything, details about that or not. But
So the individual with the keys from the state side, Mark, and Mark had been on site for about 7 months So definitely learning his way around campus. He did recognize there are some investments being made. I think primarily in buildings they anticipate staying after a potential sell. So buildings south of Main Street, like the Children's Recovery Center, et cetera. He talked about new roofs being installed in some of those buildings and new mechanical. So I would be surprised if they had scheduled a new roof on that building, because I think in their long-term plan, they envision the ultimate end user to remove all those structures. But the newer HVAC system on 109 Gray Street, when you talk to people in construction and in the world of facilities, they recognize the mobility of an asset like a 7-ton mechanical system. Absolutely possible. It may or may not make the most sense once they get in there and poke around. If we get a green light from the state and council says, go forth, that's the location, they'll do a real good walkthrough with details and potentially a mechanical engineer to, make sure the roof can hold it and, all those questions that accountants and recreation guys may not know to ask. But we do know who those professionals are. And there may be a couple of different options to provide that climate control that we think would be a needed component.
And that could be a pretty big cost saver if we're able to move that unit.
Absolutely. And even one of the things that Lance had mentioned, our building superintendent, is ductwork that's basically a sock, and you've seen it. It's a fabric ductwork that just hangs inside on a cable, and much less expensive than trying to rework sheet metal ducting. So
Yeah, I've seen it in the wellness center in the pool area, that use of that. So, and if I recall too, about 718 Porter we sold it for $500,000, and we had discussed using that as a budget for making improvements to 109 West Gray. And I understand that may have been folded into the general capital fund or what by now, but that is the number I recall as thinking about what we'd be taking the money we got from the sale of that building, which we got in a land swap with Norman Regional. And the land swap involved getting land to build the senior center on, and then land they needed to build the behavioral health care center that's now finished. And so using the funds from the sale of that building to invest into this building, I would be comfortable with that same number if that, as a budget, and hopefully coming in much less than that, especially if we're able to move a AC unit over. I think for me, the reason too is this building, again, is in the middle of the Griffin campus. The Griffin campus has served as a social service center run by the state for over 100 years, almost 140 years to be exact, since 1892. It is 1,000 feet from the front step of Food and Shelter for Friends. It's very close to the health department. It's very close to Central Oklahoma Community Health and the other services that are in that area. It's not next to any businesses. It's 1,000 feet from the Lamont School, and the Lamont School is planning to move and build a new facility in Norman. Again, I have visited with the guest at a friend's house. I mean, one of the 19 things was changing the name from guest to something else. So when we talk about 19 issues, one of them is calling them a different name. So they just need to keep that in mind. But I visited with the people that are staying there, and many of them are terrified right now for their lives that we are going to vote to kick them out on the street. And if you think it's not safe in the shelter, it's not safe for them to just be living on the street every night. And I don't see how doing that would make the situation better for them or for downtown businesses or for anybody. So like the overwhelming majority of feedback I've heard and seen, people want us to do something about this shelter, but they don't want us to just close it with nothing else to take its place. And without any other options being presented by anyone else for a location, this seems like the best and most logical place in all of Norman for something like this to go. And I'm hopeful we can work out something with the state to do that while they continue to occupy that property for the next few years. So I appreciate staff putting that together. I appreciate everybody that took the time to come out, Mayor, and everybody that came to look at the facility yesterday and walk through it. It was very interesting. There was some very interesting stuff inside that building. And so, anyway, I'm hopeful that this might help us move forward on a solution that can work for most everyone in the near future. So, thank you, Daryl.
Councilmember Dixon.
I was just going to say that I spoke to the president of the Downtowners Association today, and he said that they have zero issues with this location, if that matters to anybody. But I had that conversation today, and that's really about all I wanted to add.
Thank you, sir. No, I'll wait. I got something to add to this, because as I'm thinking, as this goes down, we're thinking ourselves inside of a box. We keep on going from place to place to place. And every time we move to that place, it's not fixed. It's not what it's supposed to be when we get there. And we're having to dump, I'll bet you 200,000 by the time you get done, brother. That's right off the top of my head. So, we're also stuck with the idea of what are we doing to downtown, and I do think that the shelter needs to close, but I think it needs to close in some different ways. If we use swamp coolers or some kind of other cooler than an air conditioner, would that work? We did it a lot in the service. People survived just fine. It was a thing to do. We don't know if we can occupy. I know Lamond is moving, but it hasn't moved, and so. That law only applies if we have sex offenders in there. And one of the problems that we've had in the past is recognizing do we have persons with sex offenses, convicted sex offenders in there and the level that they're at. As we look at what's happening to the downtowners and they're asking us to take immediate action and do what we can, yes, we need to have a place to move to. But is that a structure that's there now? What happens if we take $10,000 a month, instead of spending 53, is that the number?
Yes, sir.
53,000, let's spend 10,000, buy hotel vouchers. Get those people that need to be sheltered. I agree. I wouldn't like to sleep outside with the risk of rape, or with the risk of violence, with the risk of anything else. That's a horrible situation to be in. And it's scary to people to say that we're going to do that to them. I don't think we need to do that. I think that if we can negotiate some hotel prices that are not $190 or whatever they're spending in New York, kind of a thing, but some kind of decent place that a person can live, and do that for 2 years. Allow those that want to build a shelter. You know my feelings are not. I don't think that the city ought to own a shelter of any sort. But if the public wants to own a shelter, I think the city could contribute to that. You're talking about $500K going from however we're going to do it. Okay, you know, that's a contribution that would help. What about the other churches, places that might want to contribute? What other kind of providers? What other kind of other things? I agree with Councilmember Ball, and we need a sobering center. That could be part of it, or that could be, as Ms. Hustle put down in her diagram, another building on a similar campus. A good idea. They're close. They're not related, but they're close enough to be related if they have to be. I think there are too many variables in trying to figure out this problem, because we're aiming at one. We're trying to fit everything back into the box again, and we're not doing it well. So let's go to that idea. Let's discuss that idea of vouchers. And frankly, I do it through the COC. They already have contacts with hotels. They have contacts with all kinds of other people that have shelter that we can pay the voucher for up to a limit. I say 10K, you say your number, whatever we want to do. And as we do that, that keeps us out of the negotiation. It gets a place that works. Does it have to be in Norman? And we can, if it's not in Norman, we've got transportation. We can help people go to another place. Say it's up in Moore. There's hotels up there and more that are closed, and be able to get them back down. We can do bus stuff. We can do those other kinds of things. And then we got to figure out what happens to the furniture that we've got in the shelter now. And do we want to buy twice that amount? Or do we want to, what do we want to do? There's too many variables. So I would suggest to us that we and I know you're coming up, but I would suggest that we shift the conversation into looking at a voucher system instead of a building system. Anyway, council member?
Yes, I also spoke to members of Downtowners, and they were excited to have my support on moving the shelter to Griffin. And they also asked, because we know at the 7 a.m. kick-out time, if day shelter solution might be coming along. But they ultimately made it known that they were okay with Gray Street staying as long as we had a transition plan that we were committed to. And then they did surprise me by saying, they compared it to the elephant in the room and how do you eat an elephant, small bites. So actually this possible shelter layout would kind of fit with what they were envisioning, and seeing where we end up on a permanent location. I will say Downtowners is just one set of business owners in downtown. It does not represent every business. And so for those who are not a part of that group, there are others that want to see us have a transition plan, and they do not support closing the shelter on Gray Street. And then I would say if we were working to evolve to have a day operation, I imagine that would be an RFP that goes out. I don't know what that evolution could look like. Are we there for 6 months and then have an RFP for a day service side, or can we integrate those things in a transition? I would be curious to know, but right now I see this as very early on in the discussion. We need to figure out if we can even rent this location, and what it would take, like a real timeline of how to get in. So anyways, I'm still for moving in that direction.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you. The amount of support that I've heard from people reaching out to close the shelter on Gray Street if we have another solution in place, it has been overwhelming. And I agree with it. I think that if the city is going to provide a shelter, then it needs to be something like this that fits more of the needs of not only the people that are using the services, but is also more compatible with our business districts and the people that are looking for safety and things like that from the government. My biggest concern is whether we move this shelter from Gray Street to here, or we provide hotel vouchers, or any of the number of solutions that gets people away from business districts. Once they're there, we're not providing any case management or mobility to them to help them out of that situation, to help move them up, to help them graduate to the next phase of whatever that is. And I see this larger shelter being the first step in us maybe looking to find smaller locations that more cater to more specific needs of homeless, and maybe we lose some of the aspect of not having it in my backyard because it's not such a concentration of individuals. But I agree with several of my fellow council members who have said that, we need to look at partnerships and leveraging. We really need to aggressively leverage the partnerships that we have, including as the county seat with our county. I would like for us to enter into this exploration with them to potentially see if they could provide some sort of case management through the health department or something from the general fund. I think they've made it clear that they don't want to involve any infrastructure, but maybe it would be potentially helpful to back into some service.
Councilmember, the value of the conversation among our elected officials is so valuable. The thought of smaller locations. There are facilities in operation in Norman today, been here for years and years. They, and I'll refer to them as group homes for lack of a better description. There are scenarios where depending on the size of the house, maybe 5 unrelated individuals are housed for a variety of needs. And those models don't require contributions from the city of Norman. They have found mechanisms to bill Medicare, Medicaid, insurance, whatever the answer is, or they are eligible for state or federal funding to operate these group homes. I don't know if another organization has said, let's not look for a big giant building and put everybody in it, because the funding is always the challenge that we keep coming back to. How do we make this financially sustainable? We think there is an opportunity in a sobering center environment that there's an insurance code that says these are the services being provided, and now those service providers are able to bill for service, get paid, keep the doors open, keep the program moving forward without reliance on our, ever-stretching general fund. I think an opportunity for us to engage operators currently in Norman, providing a variety of services through those group home systems. How are they funded? What are all of the services that could be delivered using that vehicle to deliver those services? I don't think we've had that conversation, but somebody's figured out a way to get paid for delivering services using that model, and if we could crack that code, I mean, we're happy. We'll pursue any idea that comes on the dais. This is the most pressing issue facing local government in the United States of America. And darn it, we're not going away. We're going to keep fighting the good fight until we've achieved a level of satisfaction. And satisfaction is your decision when that's been achieved. And until we hear we're good, you can stop now. This is what we're doing. So I'm going to take up that challenge first thing in the morning. We're going to start making some phone calls and see if maybe there's an option down that road too. So thank you for putting that on the table.
And you're talking about a 4-bedroom house or a 5-bedroom house, a larger house that they're doing like they do the juvenile.
Exactly. And there is the name of an organization that has a couple of those houses in operation. And there are a lot more than anybody recognizes because it's just a house in a neighborhood. And there really isn't, a zoning restriction you can put on it to say, you can't do that here. They're happening in neighborhoods all across Norman right now for a variety of reasons.
Well, and my biggest concern regarding this is, again, no matter what type of facility we have, if we're not providing some sort of case management for the people that are part of the intake of that facility, then we're not actually doing anything to help the problem. We're just letting it remain stagnant. And I think that that's partially where we've been for a while. So if there's a partnership or something to that effect that we need to aggressively leverage as we move into this, then I think it's a great time to really lean on it.
I would argue with and against you on that. What we're trying to do here is give shelter. And we hope that the COC brings that continuum of care into it where we can get the services leveraged and things like that. It seems we haven't matched those well so far, and I agree with you. There's really no use to putting somebody up without a path out. You have to have path out. You have to have metrics. You have to have all kinds of other stuff. So I agree and don't.
I just see, a lot of the agencies that we're talking about putting this, I don't want to say burden, but putting this task on, they're facing their own shortfalls financially right now. Things that would be beyond our control that would limit the scope of what they're effective to do in mitigating any issues that would arise at a facility like this, especially if potentially it's going to double the capacity. So that would be my concern.
Councilmember Peacock?
Thank you. I think that last idea was just discussed has a lot of merit behind it, so I'd really like to see where it goes from there. I was really just going to I heard some other ideas mentioned that I was going to put my support behind. Day shelter, obviously, I think if we're going to lease, heat, and cool a building, if we're only doing it for 12 hours of the day, I think we've missed the mark there. So 24-hour shelter, I think that's a necessity. That's going to reduce the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods and, just keep people off the streets in general, which I think is the goal. Case management, couldn't have said it any better. I think if we don't give people a path out, what are we doing this for? So that's got to be a component. Sobering center, would love to see that co-located. And then the voucher idea, the hotel voucher idea. I think that's a very interesting idea. I don't think it's the silver bullet, but it's definitely part of the ecosystem. This big soup we're trying to create here. I definitely think it's an ingredient there. So I'd like to explore that and see if we've got any takers, if there's hotels out there that would be willing to accept vouchers, what our budget capacity might be for something like that. Again, I think all these solutions, it's multifaceted. The issue is multifaceted, so the solution has to be as well. And so I think all these are worth looking at.
I think in my mind, the voucher system would work well with families, would work well with any time you had to group people together, a caretaker and a person, that kind of a thing. Yeah. But anyway, Councilmember Grant?
Yeah, I do definitely think there are multiple strategies to employ. I was going to say, I think the type of housing City Manager Pyle was talking about is called Oxford houses.
That is one such provider.
And I will say they're individually managed. Not all of them operate the same. Sometimes they hit my radar for that reason. But it gets taken care of quickly. And they can go anywhere in the community. There's no NIMBYism about Oxford houses. The other part was, I don't know who heard this on our tour since we were broken up into little groups, but I heard from the state folks giving us the tour that Red Rock is actually not doing the URC with the county, and they would be interested in locating somewhere potentially on Griffin. I think about that in terms of, can that be with the Sobering Center, as that had been an original part of our discussion. And it also generated discussion, I want to say, with the county at one point, a Sobering Center, and a URC. Actually, that we had great conversations with the county about that. I would say, too, if we were able to do the day side, ways to lever partnerships, one of the downtown members told me that there is envisioned success for veterans and asked if they could get connected with our current shelter and any potential shelter we might move into, because they're very good at finding housing for that particular type of client, I guess. But yeah, I would like to see some partnerships come to the table and say, if we do have a day option, who could be in there and what services they would be providing. Obviously, I still think there would have to be an operator for the day side that would kind of oversee all these different services coming and going. And then I would say to the vouchers, it's been a minute since we talked to Heidi and other providers, but I think they were struggling for those vouchers to put people up in hotels. So, and also somebody gave us, actually the COC gave us homelessness is a housing problem, which I will read. But I will say having permanent supportive housing is imperative, especially when we talk about people transitioning out of a temporary shelter. And that can mean 3 to 5 years of getting stable before moving on to another type of housing. Technically, those tiny homes are supposed to be permanent supportive housing, and it is not just putting somebody into a place where they do not have case management and wraparound services. And I think there's an opportunity to see more permanent supportive housing located throughout Norman. And then also affordable housing would be another component, because we do see people struggling with their Section 8 vouchers to get into Section 8 housing, because there is a wait list for that, and some people get kicked off before they're able to redeem their vouchers. So I just would like to throw that into the conversation. Thank you.
Do I need to make a motion? Okay. Councilmember, I was going to call you Councilmember Michael.
That's all right. I thought this location looked pretty good. It's nice and big. The space, there's all kinds of extra bonuses that come along with that, aside from just spaces to put cots. I think we could, it's extra space where belongings can go. So if we do have this be a 24-hour shelter, which it absolutely needs to be a 24-hour shelter, because taking people in and just kicking them out during the day, it's not only is it cruel, but that's what people are going to be experiencing whenever, like at the businesses downtown. You know, like is pointed out earlier, you close down the shelter, that's 50 more people that's going out to downtown, that's gonna be having to sleep in the alleyways and all that. Same thing happens though every day when we kick them out at 7 o'clock in the morning, where they have to go. If we offer a place that, where they can go and that has services, and I don't know if we need to put out a new RFP, or if food and shelters contract can be adapted, because it'd be kind of an extension to modify it to be 24 hours. You know, being able to have that be 24 hours so that people that are wanting off the streets, that are wanting to get into a better situation, have a place to go. Well, then we don't have to feel so bad about calling the police on unhoused individuals that are causing problems, because there's always going to be a place for them to be during the day. And if they're not out there, and if they're out doing drugs, then, because that's one of the big hesitations, is that people don't want to call the police whenever they see somebody having a situation out in downtown, because they don't know if that's just somebody that's in a crisis mode, or if that genuinely is somebody who just got done vandalizing 2 other businesses down the street. This could at least make them a little more confident that, you know, the people that are out there causing trouble genuinely should be taken off the streets. And if we can extend this or expand it out to 100 people, that'd be even better. The location being where it is, central, between food and shelter and the county health department, where people aren't having to walk through neighborhoods or businesses to get to those locations, I think is ideal. And it has more than one bathroom, which, and it's got showers. I don't know if the existing one's got showers, but I think it's only got one bathroom, so that by itself is a big selling point. Kind of wish that we could get it up and going a little bit faster, but you know, I know these things take time. But yeah, I'm all for this location, and the faster we can get it up and going, the better.
Mr. Manager, do you have the direction that you need, sir?
Staff does, Your Honor, and we'll send out updates as we make progress step by step, and potentially continue to schedule either pre-council conferences or study sessions to keep council up to speed on every possible avenue. Thank you.
Anything further from council? We're adjourned. Thank you all.